The Aurora drifted silently through the black emptiness of space, its sleek hull catching faint glimmers from distant stars. Captain Ilara stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind her back, her eyes scanning the readings flickering across the display panels. The crew had been tasked with mapping a new sector near the edge of the Kythera asteroid belt, an area so remote that most of humanity's ships avoided it unless absolutely necessary. There was little to find, or so they had believed. Then, without warning, a blip appeared on the radar. At first, it was faint, almost indistinguishable from space debris. But as the ship drew closer, the outline became clearer. It was a vessel, drifting, but not just any vessel. Its shape was unmistakable. The design matched the long-lost Celestine, a ship that had vanished 28 years ago during a colonization mission to the Outer Rim. "Ilara, you need to see this," Lieutenant Mara said, pointing to the screen. Her voice was a mix of disbelief and cautious excitement. The radar showed the derelict ship slowly moving as if guided by some unseen hand. Ilara's brow furrowed. "That's impossible. The Celestine went missing decades ago. No distress signals, no sightings, nothing. And now it's... back?" She shook her head. "How?" The Aurora's engines hummed softly as it approached the drifting vessel. There was an eerie beauty to the Celestine, scarred by years of exposure to deep space. Its hull was charred in places, some panels missing entirely, but strangely intact for a ship that had been abandoned for so long. The silence of the void around it was almost overwhelming, pressing against the crew as they stared at the ghostly vessel. "Sensors are picking up something odd," said Chief Engineer Joran, his voice tense. "There are footprints. Fresh footprints. They're leading toward the main deck." The words made the room fall silent. Footprints, on a ship that had been empty for decades. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Mara's hand trembled slightly as she adjusted the zoom on her display. "That can't be right," she whispered. "No one has been on that ship. Ever." Alara's mind raced. She had faced dangerous missions before, but this was unlike anything she had imagined. "Prepare a boarding team," she ordered. "Full protective suits. No one goes in alone. And keep the comms open at all times. We don't know what we're dealing with here." The team suited up quickly, the hum of life support systems in their helmets mingling with the tension on the bridge. As the airlock hissed open, Ilara took the lead, stepping cautiously onto the Celestine's main deck. Every step echoed in the empty corridors, the sound swallowed by the vast, hollow ship. The footprints were there, clear against the dusty floor. They were human-sized, ordinary shoes, yet they seemed impossibly recent. The team followed them slowly, their flashlights cutting through the dim, flickering emergency lights. Every shadow seemed to move on its own, every metal groan of the ship a potential threat. "Look at this," Joran said, pointing to the shattered remnants of the bridge. The control panels were scorched, some screens flickering faintly, displaying fragmented data that was impossible to interpret fully. A chair sat twisted in the corner, as if someone had left in a hurry, or been forced to. Mara bent down, examining the footprints. "They're not old. They were made within days, maybe hours. But how? There's no way anyone could have reached this sector undetected, and the ship has been drifting for decades." Ilara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Her mind raced with possibilities, some terrifying, some unbelievable. "Keep your eyes open," she warned. "We need to know who or what has been here, and we need to do it without becoming part of the mystery ourselves." They moved cautiously through the corridors. Broken furniture, scattered supplies, and tools littered the floor, remnants of a crew long gone. The silence was oppressive, filled only with the occasional groan of metal expanding and contracting in the cold of space. And yet the footprints continued, guiding them deeper into the ship. In the engineering section, Joran paused, staring at a section of the floor that glowed faintly. These lights, they shouldn't be on. The ship's power should be completely dead. He knelt to examine a panel, wires exposed and sparking slightly. Someone has been keeping some systems online, just enough to move around, maybe. Ilara frowned, tension coiling in her chest. Then someone has been here all this time, or something. She didn't like how her voice trembled at the last word, but she forced herself to stay calm. We find them before they find us, and we stay together. The team continued forward, following the path of footprints into the main hold. There, they found evidence of habitation, makeshift bedding, ration packets, and a crude hydroponic setup. Someone had been surviving here, using ingenuity to adapt the ship into a living space. The very idea was astounding and frightening. Humanity, or something like it, had endured here where no one else could. Mara picked up a torn piece of a logbook. The text was faded but readable in parts. "It's a message from the original crew," she said. "But it ends abruptly, mid-sentence. Whatever happened here happened fast." The air seemed to grow colder as Ilara stepped closer to the center of the hold. Her instincts screamed that they were not alone. Then she heard it, a faint hum, barely audible at first, rising and falling like a pulse. The ship seemed alive in a way that defied understanding. "Did anyone else hear that?" she asked, her voice low. "It's probably a system anomaly," Joran said, though his hand rested on the weapon at his side. "Or maybe the ship itself is generating power." But the hum grew louder, resonating through the floor and walls. The lights flickered as if responding to their presence. Ilara's heart pounded in her chest. She realized with a mixture of awe and dread that the ship was not simply a vessel. It was aware. It reacted to them. "Keep moving," she ordered, trying to steady her voice. "Stay calm. We need to reach the bridge." The journey to the bridge was tense. Every corner they turned, every corridor they passed, seemed to stretch longer than it should. Shadows danced in the flickering light, and strange shapes loomed in the distance, only to vanish when approached. The crew's nerves were fraying, but they pressed on, driven by curiosity and duty. Finally, they reached the bridge. The room was a ruin of scorched panels, shattered screens, and twisted metal. Yet, in the center, a console flickered faintly to life, responding to their approach. Ilara stepped forward cautiously. "It's like it's waiting for us," she murmured. The footprints ended here, stopping abruptly at the center of the room. Whoever, or whatever, had walked these halls had never left the bridge, and yet the feeling of presence was overwhelming, as if the observer had melted into the shadows, watching, waiting, studying them. Joran tapped at the console. Data scrolled across the screen, fragmented and incomplete. Ilara leaned closer, reading the fragments. Mission logs, crew communications, coordinates to unknown locations, and a warning: "Do not open the path. They will come." The words made her blood run cold. Who wrote this? And who or what was supposed to come? She whispered. Before anyone could answer, a loud clang echoed from the far side of the bridge. The crew spun toward the sound, weapons raised, hearts racing. The sound came again, closer this time, like footsteps on metal. Not the soft, steady steps they had been following, but deliberate, measured, and impossible to ignore. Ilara motioned for the team to stay calm. "Whatever it is, we face it together. We don't run. We don't panic. We figure this out." As the hum in the ship grew louder, the lights flickering faster, a shadow passed across the wall. It was human-shaped, tall, moving with purpose. And then it was gone. The crew stared at each other, fear and amazement mingling in their eyes. The Celestine was not abandoned. It had been alive in ways they could not understand, and it had waited, perhaps for them, perhaps for something else entirely. Ilara felt a mixture of dread and awe. Humanity had always faced the unknown with courage, and now they were standing at the edge of it, on a ship that had survived decades alone, carrying secrets, dangers, and perhaps the remnants of human ingenuity in forms they could barely comprehend. One thought repeated in her mind as she stared at the flickering console. Whoever, or whatever, was here. It had left those footprints for a reason, and soon they would find out why. The Aurora's boarding team held their ground, ready for anything. The ghost ship had returned, and it had brought with it a mystery that would test the limits of human courage, ingenuity, and survival. And somewhere in the dark corridors of the Celestine, unseen eyes watched, waiting, calculating, aware that new humans had arrived and the game of survival had just begun. The Aurora's crew stood frozen on the bridge of the Celestine, their flashlights flickering in the dim emergency lights. The shadow had vanished, leaving only the echo of its movement and the faint hum of the ship's systems. Captain Ilara's pulse raced, but she forced herself to breathe evenly. There was no turning back now. They were committed to discovering the truth behind the ghost ship and its strange, fresh footprints. "Keep your comms open," she instructed, "and stay in visual range. Whatever's here, it's intelligent." "We can't underestimate it." Mara nodded, though her hands trembled slightly as she scanned the dark corridors. Joran crouched by the control console, tapping at the flickering screens. "The system isn't dead," he said. "It's partially online, but the interface is unusual. Whoever kept this ship alive wasn't just surviving, they were communicating with it." Ilara frowned. "Communicating? How do you mean?" Joran gestured at the display. "The power flow is erratic but intentional. It responds to movements, to weight on the floor. It's like the ship itself learned how to live and move with whoever was aboard." Ilara shivered at the thought. Humanity had always been defined by ingenuity, but this was something different. It was human adaptability pushed to the extreme, a survival instinct that had transformed the ship itself. She felt a strange mix of admiration and fear. They moved deeper into the corridors, following the path the footprints had traced. The air was colder here, heavier somehow, pressing against their suits. Strange whispers filled the silence, barely audible, like fragments of conversations caught on the comms. "Ilara," Mara whispered, "do you hear that? Someone's talking. Or it thinks it is." Ilara nodded. "Stay calm. It's probably an automated system or a residual AI reacting to our presence." The footprints led them to the engineering section. There, the team found evidence of long-term survival, tools meticulously organized, containers of water and nutrients, and a small hydroponic setup that had been carefully maintained. It was clear someone had lived here using nothing but the ship itself to survive. "Look at this," Joran said, pointing to the hydroponics bay. "They've been growing food, fresh food, and judging by the moisture in the soil, they've been tending it very recently." Mara crouched by a table covered with tools and spare parts. "They repaired the ship. Some of these systems are patched in ways that would take decades of experience to figure out. Whoever this is, they aren't just surviving. They're thriving." Ilara felt a rising sense of respect. Humanity had always prided itself on survival and innovation, and this unseen individual had embodied both to a degree that was almost unimaginable. Yet the mystery remained. Who were they, and why were they leaving footprints without ever revealing themselves? They continued through the corridors until they reached the bridge. The console flickered more strongly now, responding to their presence. Lights pulsed in subtle patterns, as if the ship itself were alive, communicating in a language the crew could not yet understand. Ilara reached out to touch the console. A holographic display sprang to life, projecting fragments of the ship's logs. Voices, old and distorted, spoke in broken sentences. Mission. Delayed. Anomaly. Do not. They will. The words were fragmented, incomplete, but enough to reveal a chilling truth. Something had happened on the ship. Something sudden. Something that had forced the original crew to vanish, or perhaps transform. The mystery deepened with every passing second. Then, a movement caught Mara's eye. Across the bridge, in a shadowed corner, a figure appeared and vanished in an instant. A human shape, tall and thin, moving silently, leaving footprints in its wake. The team froze, hearts hammering. "Did anyone else see that?" Mara whispered. Ilara nodded. "Yes, and I want everyone to remain calm. Remember, they've been surviving here alone for decades. They may see us as intruders." The hum of the ship grew louder, almost musical in its rhythm. It was as if the ship itself were alive, aware of their fear and their curiosity. And somewhere inside, the unseen occupant watched them, calculating, observing, learning. "Let's split into 2 teams," Ilara decided. "Joran, Mara, you come with me to the forward section. We need to see the crew quarters and any signs of the original mission. The others stay near the bridge, monitor comms, and maintain distance." The team moved cautiously. Every corridor seemed longer than it should have been, every shadow a possible hiding place. The Celestine's layout was familiar yet alien, twisted by years of improvisation and repair. In the crew quarters, they found personal belongings preserved in small pockets of space, a diary with faded ink, a child's toy, a photograph of the original crew. The items were reminders that the ship had once been filled with life, laughter, and hope. Now, only survival remained. "Ilara, look at this," Mara said, pointing to a workstation. "The logs. They're encrypted, but fragments show someone was experimenting with biological modifications. They were trying to survive in ways that ordinary humans couldn't." Ilara's brow furrowed. "Modifications. That explains the footprints. Whoever survived here may not be fully human anymore. They adapted to live in the ship's environment for decades." Joran frowned. "But if they're still alive, why leave footprints without revealing themselves?" "Why let us think the ship is haunted?" Ilara shook her head. "We don't know their motives. But one thing is clear. This is a test of human ingenuity, endurance, and morality. How we respond now matters." The hum rose to a crescendo, and a soft light emanated from the far end of the corridor. A figure emerged, stepping into the glow. The crew froze. It was a man, or something very close to a man. Tall, lean, with sharp, intelligent eyes that gleamed under the dim lights. His skin was pale from years without sunlight, and his movements were precise, deliberate, and cautious. Ilara stepped forward, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We mean you no harm. We're explorers, not intruders. We want to understand, not fight." The man studied them silently. His eyes flicked to the footprints on the floor, then back to the crew. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm but firm. "You shouldn't be here. This place is dangerous, but I see you are human. You will understand." Mara swallowed nervously. Who are you?" "I am a survivor," he said simply. "My ancestors were part of this ship's original mission. I have lived here, alone, for decades. I adapted. I survived. And now, the time has come to make contact." Ilara felt a mix of relief and awe. Here was someone who had taken humanity's ingenuity and endurance to an unimaginable extreme. They were witnessing the results of survival against impossible odds, an example of human spirit honed by isolation and necessity. "Why did you leave footprints?" Ilara asked cautiously. "Why not reveal yourself sooner?" The survivor's eyes glimmered. To see if you were like them, he said. To see if humans still carry the courage, curiosity, and respect that my ancestors valued. Footprints are evidence. They are a test. And now you have passed it. The crew exchanged stunned glances. The mystery of the footprints was solved, but new questions arose. How had he survived? What modifications had been made to endure space alone? And what could they learn from him? He led them deeper into the ship, showing how he had repaired systems, grown food, and maintained life support for decades. Every corner of the Celestine told a story of human determination and ingenuity. Tools were crafted with precision, systems optimized for minimal energy use, and every task performed with care and intelligence. "Ilara," Joran said quietly, "this is beyond anything I've imagined. He's survived in space, alone, for decades, and thrived. This is humanity at its best. And it's also a warning. We need to respect the unknown and adapt quickly, or we fail." The survivor nodded. "I've learned from the ship, and it has learned from me. Together, we exist. But isolation teaches lessons that no classroom can provide. I had to survive, to understand, and to see if others like you could continue what my ancestors started." Ilara felt a surge of pride. Humanity had always faced the unknown with courage. They had built civilizations on hostile worlds, sailed through the void of space, and faced dangers that would crush lesser species. And here was proof. One human, alone, surviving decades in impossible conditions, and still embodying the principles that made humanity strong. As the crew returned to the bridge, the hum of the ship seemed to shift, softer now, almost approving. The survivor had chosen to reveal himself. The mystery of the Celestine was no longer a threat. It was a story of endurance, intelligence, and the enduring spirit of humans. Ilara turned to her team. "We have much to learn from him," she said, "and the Celestine has much to teach us. But we must be careful. Knowledge carries responsibility. We are here to understand, to respect, and to preserve. Humanity thrives when we face the unknown with courage, and this is the ultimate example." The survivor looked at the crew, his expression calm but intense. "There are dangers in space that no human can predict. But there are also lessons in survival, in adaptation, and in respect for the unknown. You must remember both." Ilara nodded. "We will. And we will make sure the story of your survival and the ingenuity it took is never forgotten." The Aurora's crew spent the rest of the cycle documenting the survivor's life aboard the Celestine, recording every detail of his adaptations, the ship's modifications, and the careful routines that had allowed him to endure. Each discovery inspired awe and reinforced the essence of humanity: courage, ingenuity, and resilience in the face of impossible odds. As they prepared to leave the engineering section, the survivor paused at the threshold. "Remember this," he said quietly. "Humanity is not defined by what we avoid, but by what we endure. We survive, we adapt, and we rise." Ilara felt the truth of his words resonate deeply. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and mystery, and they had met it with intelligence, courage, and respect. Humanity, she realized, was not just about survival. It was about thriving, learning, and preserving hope in the face of the unknown. And somewhere deep within the Celestine, the ship's hum shifted once more, softer now, like a quiet acknowledgement. The footprints on the deck were no longer a warning. They were a symbol of endurance, ingenuity, and the human spirit that refused to be broken, no matter how deep the darkness of space. The encounter had only just begun. The survivor led the Aurora's team through the labyrinthine corridors of the Celestine, moving with a fluid grace that came from decades of practice in zero gravity and confined spaces. Captain Alara and her crew followed closely, their senses heightened, aware that every sound might conceal a threat or a clue. The ship, which had once seemed ghostly and dead, now felt alive, humming with the quiet energy of life sustained against impossible odds. "I need to show you the heart of this ship," the survivor said, his voice calm yet firm. "It's where I maintain systems, grow food, and monitor external conditions. It's the only way I've stayed alive all these years." The corridors opened into a vast chamber. Rows of makeshift hydroponic stations glowed with soft green light. Nutrient tubes ran along the walls, feeding plants that were surprisingly healthy, given the age of the ship. Alongside the plants, small mechanical devices maintained pressure, temperature, and oxygen flow. It was a delicate ecosystem, balanced with precision and care. Alara stepped forward, awe evident on her face. This is incredible. You've created life in the middle of deep space, alone, with nothing but the ship itself." The survivor smiled faintly. "I learned to adapt, and the ship learned from me. Together, we survived. Everything here depends on careful attention, creativity, and patience. One mistake, one lapse, and it's over." Joran crouched to examine a device controlling the oxygen levels. "This is genius. Even with partial power, these systems run smoothly. Whoever designed this, or maintained it, understood limits and efficiency better than any engineer I've known." Mara's eyes scanned the rows of plants. "And you've been growing food all this time? Fresh vegetables? That explains the footprints. You've been moving around daily tending the crops." The survivor nodded. "Daily routines are essential. Physical activity, mental focus, they are as important as food and water. Isolation tests everything. You lose your mind first if you stop moving or thinking. I've had to adapt my body and my mind to survive here." Alara studied him carefully. "And your body, it's changed, hasn't it? You've adapted in ways we can't fully understand. But I see the intelligence, the discipline, humanity at its best." The survivor's gaze met hers. "Yes, my body has changed, but my mind remains human. That's what matters. Survival is not just about the body, it's about ingenuity, patience, and decision-making. The ship taught me that, and I have honored the lessons." They walked deeper into the engineering chamber where panels were open, wires twisted in neat configurations, and systems patched in ways that only someone who had lived and learned in the environment could manage. Every modification was practical, efficient, and functional. Nothing was wasted. "Tell me about the mission," Alara asked. "What happened to your ancestors?" The survivor paused, thinking. The original crew faced conditions they could not have predicted. An anomaly in space disrupted communications, damaged the ship, and isolated us from Earth. My ancestors fought to survive, but over time, some perished. I inherited their work, their knowledge, and their determination. I adapted to continue what they began." Joran frowned. "Decades alone? How do you cope mentally? Most humans would break." "I learned to structure my days," the survivor explained. "Routine, observation, experimentation. Every day is a lesson. Solitude teaches more than any classroom. Fear and uncertainty sharpen the mind. Curiosity sustains it, and hope drives it." The crew felt the weight of his words. In the cold emptiness of space, one human had endured where many would have failed. The Celestine itself had become a partner in survival, responding to his presence and assisting in ways that were subtle but crucial. As they continued through the ship, Mara noticed a small section of the wall glowing faintly. "What's that?" she asked. "That is the secondary power grid," the survivor said. "It's running minimal systems now, keeping essential life support and communications functional. I've hidden it from automated scans to avoid unnecessary attention. Only those I trust may access it." Alara nodded. "Trust is earned, not given. You've lived alone for decades. You've survived perfectly because you had no one to rely on but yourself and the ship. The hum of the Celestine grew louder as they approached the forward section. The air shimmered slightly, as if the ship were responding to the presence of multiple humans. The survivor stopped and looked at Alara. You need to see this. The anomaly. The reason my ancestors disappeared and why I adapted the way I did. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had faced unknown phenomena before, but the way the survivor spoke suggested danger, something beyond human comprehension. He led them to a room that had once been the cargo bay. Large panels were removed, exposing a swirling field of faint energy suspended in the air. It pulsed gently, casting shadows that twisted like liquid on the walls. This is the anomaly, the survivor said. It appeared shortly after the mission began. It damaged communication systems, affected navigation, and caused physical changes to those who stayed too close. My ancestors tried to study it, but it was beyond their understanding. I learned to live with it, to adapt. Joran stepped closer, eyes wide. That's incredible. What is it? The survivor shook his head. I do not know. It is a natural phenomenon, yet it responds to life. It has intelligence, awareness. It is not hostile if respected, but it can destroy everything if underestimated. My ancestors underestimated it. I adapted to coexist. Alara studied the anomaly, feeling a mix of awe and fear. Humanity had always sought to explore the unknown, to push boundaries, and here was proof that even in the far reaches of space, the universe held mysteries beyond comprehension, yet human ingenuity could meet them. Why show us this now? Mara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because you will need to understand it if humanity is to survive in these regions, the survivor replied. Knowledge is not enough. Application, adaptation, and respect are essential. You must learn to coexist with the unknown, just as I have. Alara nodded slowly. We will, and we will take this knowledge back. Your survival, your ingenuity. It proves humanity can endure even in the most extreme conditions. That is the story we will carry forward. The survivor glanced at them, his expression solemn. Endurance is only part of it. Humanity thrives because it adapts, collaborates, and respects the unknown. You will see this truth when you leave this ship and continue exploring. Never forget it. Suddenly, the Celestine shuddered. Warning lights flashed across panels, and the hum of the anomaly intensified. The crew instinctively braced themselves. What now? Joran asked, alarmed. The anomaly is reacting, the survivor said calmly. It senses your presence, it tests, but it does not attack. Remain calm, respect its patterns, move slowly, do not interfere. Alara issued quiet commands. All teams, stay together. Keep distance from the anomaly. Observe, record, and do not provoke. Follow instructions exactly. The anomaly pulsed again, sending waves of energy that made their suits vibrate slightly. Yet, as the survivor had said, it did not harm them. Instead, it shifted subtly, almost as if it were examining them. This is incredible, Mara whispered. It's aware. It's studying us. Yes, the survivor said. Just as I have been studied all these years, the anomaly does not kill without reason. It tests, it measures, it teaches. Survive it, and you learn. Fail, and you disappear. The crew moved carefully, following the survivor's guidance. Every step was deliberate, measured, and observant. They recorded data, noted patterns, and marveled at the intelligence that the anomaly seemed to possess. After what felt like hours, the Celestine stabilized. The anomaly's pulses slowed, its energy field dimming slightly. The survivor gestured toward the exit. You have learned the first lesson. Patience, observation, and respect are the keys to survival. The anomaly is not your enemy. It is a mirror, reflecting your choices." Ilara felt the weight of his words. Humanity had always faced challenges with courage, but survival was more than bravery. It was knowledge, adaptability, and humility before forces greater than themselves. As the crew returned to the bridge, Ilara reflected on what they had witnessed. The survivor had endured decades in isolation, adapted to impossible conditions, and learned to coexist with the anomaly. He embodied the essence of humanity: intelligence, creativity, resilience, and moral judgment. Joran broke the silence. This changes everything. If one human can survive here, imagine what we can do with collaboration, adaptation, learning, innovation. Our species is limitless when we apply ourselves." Ilara nodded. "Exactly. Humanity thrives because we persist, adapt, and learn from the unknown. And now, we have proof, living proof, that our spirit can endure even in the void of space." The survivor looked at them, a faint smile on his face. "Remember this lesson. Endurance alone is not enough. Curiosity, ingenuity, and respect for the unknown define humanity's true strength. Carry it with you." As the Aurora's crew prepared to leave the forward section, the survivor lingered near the anomaly, watching them. The ship hummed softly, a gentle acknowledgement of their shared understanding. The footprints on the deck, once a warning, were now a testament to resilience, adaptability, and the enduring human spirit. Ilara felt a deep sense of responsibility. Their mission was no longer just exploration. It was the preservation and continuation of what the survivor had proven. Humanity could survive and thrive in the most extreme conditions if it embraced ingenuity, courage, and moral clarity. The Celestine had returned from the void, carrying not only footprints but a legacy of human endurance and a living example of what it meant to face the unknown and prevail. And as they moved forward, Ilara knew the greatest challenges and triumphs were still ahead. The encounter had shifted everything. Humanity was not simply surviving in space. They were learning, adapting, and preparing for a future defined by courage, intelligence, and an unbreakable spirit. The Aurora and the Celestine drifted silently near the asteroid belt, the dark void stretching endlessly around them. Captain Ilara stood on the bridge of the Aurora, her eyes scanning the instruments. The anomaly in the Celestine hummed faintly, a soft rhythm like a heartbeat that both reassured and unnerved the crew. The survivor's presence aboard the Celestine had changed everything. He was no longer a mysterious figure hiding in the shadows. He had shared knowledge, insight, and proof that humanity could endure when pushed to the limits. Suddenly, the warning alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the bridge. Ilara's heart jumped. "Report!" she shouted. Lieutenant Mara's fingers flew over the console. "Asteroid swarm detected, approaching fast. We're on a collision course if we don't act immediately." Joran's voice was tight. "The swarm is dense. No normal ship can navigate through it at this speed. We could be crushed before we can react." Ilara took a deep breath, trying to calm the fear rising in her chest. Humanity had always faced impossible odds and emerged stronger. This was no different. "Get the survivor on comms. We need his help. He knows this ship better than anyone." The connection to the Celestine clicked on. The survivor's calm voice came through. "I am here. Stay calm. Follow my instructions exactly. I've navigated through asteroid fields worse than this. You will survive if you trust your instincts and mine." Ilara nodded. "We're ready. Guide us." The survivor's voice was steady, precise. "All ships, adjust thrusters slightly to the left. Timing is critical. You must move as one. Any deviation and the swarm will destroy you. I will open a path using the Celestine's thrusters and external systems. Follow the light patterns I activate. They will guide you." The crew moved quickly, adrenaline sharpening their focus. The Celestine's lights flashed in a sequence, pulsing like beacons in the darkness. The Aurora's thrusters adjusted, following the signals exactly. The asteroid swarm loomed closer, massive rocks spinning unpredictably in the void. Each second counted. Ilara's hands gripped the console. "Hold steady, we're almost there." The Celestine systems responded with precision, creating a narrow corridor through the dense field. The survivors' calm guidance kept the crew focused, preventing panic from overwhelming their judgment. The Aurora weaved carefully, narrowly avoiding collisions. Sparks flew as small fragments grazed the hull, but the crew remained unflinching. Joran's voice trembled slightly. "We're entering the densest part, now!" Ilara held her breath. Every instrument reading was critical. The asteroids spun faster, their trajectory erratic. The Aurora dodged, adjusted, and followed the survivors' carefully measured instructions. "Steady! Steady! Now full impulse thrusters!" the survivor commanded. The ship surged forward, dodging massive rocks by inches. The lights on the Celestine pulsed faster, guiding them through the final stretch. The crew's focus was absolute, every movement precise, every calculation crucial. Then, with a final pulse from the Celestine, the Aurora cleared the swarm. The vast emptiness of space lay ahead once more. The bridge erupted in relieved exclamations. Ilara exhaled, her heart pounding. "Good work, everyone. That was incredible. And we owe it to our survivor friend here." The survivor's calm voice came through, tinged with the faintest hint of pride. "You followed the instructions. You adapted. You survived. That is humanity." Joran shook his head in disbelief. "I've never seen anything like that. One human, decades alone, guiding a ship through an asteroid swarm that would destroy an entire fleet. It's unreal." Mara looked at the survivor, eyes wide. "You've survived alone for decades, and now you just saved all of us. Humanity really can rise above anything." The survivor's expression was solemn. "It is not heroism. It is survival, adaptation, and understanding. Courage is meaningless without knowledge and patience. You demonstrated all three today. That is what defines human strength." Ilara felt a deep sense of awe. The Celestine had returned not just as a ghost ship, but as a living example of what humanity could achieve. Decades of isolation had honed one human into a symbol of ingenuity, endurance, and moral clarity. She knew that the story of this survival would inspire generations. As the immediate danger passed, the crew gathered in the main chamber of the Aurora. The survivor had joined them physically, leaving the shadows of the Celestine behind. For the first time, they could see the full extent of his adaptations. Lean, strong, eyes bright with intelligence and focus. He was human, yet transformed by decades of extreme survival. "Ilara," Joran said, breaking the silence, "we need to document everything. Systems, survival methods, modifications. This is a treasure trove of knowledge. Humanity can use this to explore farther, survive longer, and adapt faster than ever before." Ilara nodded. "We will, but it's not just technology. It's mindset, patience, observation, ingenuity, courage. The survivor embodies all of these. That is the real lesson." The survivor stepped forward. "The anomaly will remain aboard the Celestine. It is not a threat if respected. It is a teacher. Learn from it, but do not underestimate it. Humanity is capable of much, but arrogance can destroy it faster than the void itself." Mara looked at the anomaly, still faintly glowing in the distance. "It's beautiful, terrifying, and alive." "Yes," the survivor agreed. "And that is how humanity should view the unknown. Respect it, understand it, and use intelligence and courage to thrive." Over the next few cycles, the crew worked alongside the survivor to stabilize the Celestine systems. They repaired damaged panels, integrated data logs, and recorded methods for growing food, maintaining life support, and adapting to long-term isolation. Every day was a lesson in human endurance and ingenuity. Ilara often watched the survivor as he moved among the crew, teaching, guiding, and observing. She realized that what they were witnessing was more than survival. It was the essence of humanity distilled into a single person, honed by necessity and curiosity. One day, while walking through the hydroponic bays, the survivor spoke quietly to Ilara. "You may not see it now, but humanity is changing. Each generation learns faster, adapts better. My survival is a proof of concept. Now it is your turn to carry this forward." Ilara nodded, understanding the depth of his words. Humanity's journey into the unknown was just beginning. Every discovery, every challenge, every danger would test courage and ingenuity. But the spirit that had survived aboard the Celestine was the same spirit that would carry humanity to the stars. As the Aurora prepared to leave the remote sector, towing the Celestine toward a research station, the survivor stood at the observation deck, gazing at the endless black of space. For decades, he had lived among stars, alone and vigilant. Now he would return to humanity, sharing knowledge and hope. The crew gathered around, a sense of accomplishment and awe filling the chamber. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and the unknown, and had come through stronger. The footprints that had once signaled mystery and danger were now symbols of survival, resilience, and the enduring human spirit. Ilara turned to the survivor. "You've given us more than knowledge. You've given us proof that humanity can rise above fear, isolation, and impossibility. We will carry this lesson forward." The survivor smiled faintly. "And you will face challenges I cannot. Remember what I taught you: courage, patience, respect, and adaptability. These are the tools of survival and the tools of triumph." As the ships moved together through the void, the asteroid belt behind them, the Aurora's crew felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity was capable of incredible endurance, ingenuity, and moral strength. They had witnessed it in one person, alone, for decades, and now it was their responsibility to carry that legacy into the future. The hum of the Celestine faded slightly, as if satisfied. Its long years of isolation had ended not in death, but in partnership. Humanity had not only survived, they had learned, adapted, and triumphed. Captain Ilara looked out at the stars, feeling the weight and promise of their journey. Humanity would face more unknowns, more challenges, more dangers. But the story of the Celestine and its survivor was proof that the human spirit, when guided by courage, ingenuity, and respect for the unknown, could endure and thrive where others would fail. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a vast, uncharted ocean, and humanity would sail it, fearless, resourceful, and unbroken. The journey was far from over. But the footprints on the Celestine's deck, once mysterious and haunting, now stood as a testament. Humanity rises, survives, adapts, and endures, no matter the darkness that lies ahead. And somewhere in the quiet hum of the ships, in the empty corridors, and the soft glow of life-sustaining systems, the Celestine whispered its approval. Humanity had not only survived the unknown, it had learned from it, grown with it, and triumphed. The legacy of the abandoned ship had been reclaimed, and a new chapter for humanity had begun.